Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Something in the Wild podcast. I'm Tyler Smith, with you as always. And today, right now, I am out in Colorado while you're listening to this. I will be out there for the week. Told you guys this a lot. Hopefully next week I'll have some kind of story. Hopefully a story of success with a little bit of luck. Maybe that will happen. But yeah, just looking forward to being out there and sharing with you guys everything that happens, and there will be something to talk about. I'm absolutely positive of that. So, without further ado, let's get right into the episode. And today I kind of have kind of a hard-hitting topic, a little slightly political. Although I don't really think so. Some people could argue, one way or the other. But I've talked about this before. It's Colorado's new initiative to ban the hunting of mountain lions in the state, hunting mountain lions and bobcats, that is. It now has an official initiative number, so that's Initiative 91, which for all of those Colorado residents voting this November, please, Colorado sportsmen in general, please, first of all, register to vote, and second of all, vote against Initiative 91. It's going to be on the ballot November 5th, so make sure that you go out there and you vote to not proceed with it. I'm assuming it's probably no, you don't agree with it, but just make sure you read and you're choosing the right selection. But the first things first is you need to go out there and you need to register to vote so that you can, in fact, go to the ballots November 5th and make sure that doesn't pass. But for those of you skeptical, those Colorado residents may be skeptical about it, or just in general, hunters skeptical about the whole situation with mountain lion hunting. How you might think, well, I don't care if they ban it. Well, that's not the approach you should be taking, because even if you don't live in Colorado, even if you never plan on hunting mountain lions, this is going to affect you at some point in time, because the specific verbiage can be easily replaced with elk, with whitetail, with pheasant. They're talking a lot about there's a lot of measures in this ballot about training collars, GPS collars for dogs. So if you like running around like I do with my lab and my pointer during pheasant season, this is going to hit closer to home than you probably realize. So just making sure that you're aware of what's going on in the conservation space. Absolutely crucial for hunters and anglers in today's day and age, because in an increasingly political world, the only way to make your voice heard and to be able to fight for the things that you believe in is to be well-versed in the political atmosphere, what's kind of going on. Trust me, I don't want to be. I'd much rather not have to worry about it, but that's a little bit naive of me, a little bit ignorant to think that if I don't get involved, things are just going to happen on their own. So making sure we're getting involved here. So how I kind of want to structure this episode, how I want to break this down for you. I want to first talk about, kind of the history of hunting in this country. I want to talk about why that's important, go into the reasons for why wildlife is now thriving in most parts of the country, and then talk about, why we care about not banning the hunting of mountain lions, even for us non-mountain lion hunters. I've never hunted mountain lions before in my life, and I would like to at some point, but it's not super high on the list. But I still care about this because it does affect things that I do deeply want to try and want to do for the rest of my life. So let's get right into it. So first thing I want to talk about was just kind of the history of hunting, right? So I'm going to break the history of hunting down into 4 different eras. So the first era is pre-European settlement. It's basically from the time of people coming into America over the Bering Land Bridge through Alaska, up until whenever Europeans settled here. So that was a hunter-gatherer, close to the bone, hunting large animals kind of lifestyle, and they made a damn good living doing it. They were able to feed themselves, survive, and really thrive on the landscape, and develop hunting strategies and tactics that were very efficient for that time, while also caring for the land and making sure that that people were being fed, and while the populations were strong and they were healthy. Now that's kind of very far removed, and a lot of people can't really comprehend what that time was like. So let's start talking a little bit more about European settlement to the 1750s ish. That's going to be my next era. So from European settlement to the time of 1750. So whenever Europeans first got here, they wanted to explore. They wanted more land. They wanted more territory. They wanted to be able to build these colonies and these different areas and build them up and bring more Europeans over. And this was kind of like a limbo time where Native Americans were fighting, but they were also like trying to be nice. They were trying to help them out, but then they soon realized that they were being taken advantage of, and these Europeans were kind of like decimating their wildlife populations in those specific areas. But that's not really a huge chapter in terms of the wildlife, and wildlife resource and things like that. Where it really starts changing is from 1750 to 1910, which is going to be like my next era right here, and that is the era of market hunting. So that can be classified into several different categories. We got like the long hunters. That's the early market hunting period. We had the buffalo hide hunters. That's like kind of the middle, and then the latter part was just general market hunting in westward expansion. So what a lot of people don't understand is that like these people that were hunting, and these market hunters, what they were doing was providing for America's insatiable appetite to explore and to move west in the country. People were coming here. Europeans were coming here, and they were moving west for greater opportunity, for gold, for land, for prosperity, for more animals. They were moving west, and these market hunters, they had an obligation to feed all these people. I mean, it's not very far away from what's going on right now with the cattle and the beef industry, where people, these giant companies are slaughtering millions of cows, not because they want to, but because there's a market for it. There's a market to provide food for all these people that are moving into the United States, the booming population, and providing food for these supermarkets and things like that, so people can eat and we're not starving. So not very dissimilar to what's going on now with the beef industry, but that was what's going on. Market hunting was running rampant. We were destroying big game populations, and really no sound management plans, nothing. It was just kill as much as we can, get as much meat as we can, get as many hides as we can, and then sell that to the market, and get it while the getting's good, and not worry about the future. Now, that all really changed rapidly right around the 1910 time frame. Now, what basically happened during this time was the implication of rules, regulations, licenses, harvest numbers, bag limits, things like that. And that brings us into our current era of hunting. So like the 1910 to now. And this is very broad. I mean, you can break these down even more, but this is like just kind of all encompassing. So from 1910, that was when we instated the unofficial, but kind of official North American model for wildlife conservation. Now, I'm going to stop for a second. You guys might be like, what the heck does this have to do with mountain lion hunting or banning mountain lion hunting? I'll get there in a minute, but I think that the history is important. So, there are 7 points in the North American model of wildlife conservation. Number 1, and I'll go through all these, let you kind of digest it, explain a little bit, but for the most part, just let you interpret them for how you want to interpret them. So, number 1, wildlife resources are conserved and held in trust for all citizens. That basically means that wildlife isn't owned by one individual person or a group of people or anything like that. It's for all people, much like public land. Now, number 2. Commerce in dead wildlife is eliminated. So that means that there is no longer a market to sell wild game meat, for obvious reasons. Number 3, wildlife is allocated according to democratic rule of law. Number 4, wildlife may only be killed for a legitimate, non-frivolous purpose. So, i.e. eating the meat or preserving the fur and pelt. Number 5, wildlife is an international resource. It's basically talking about, ducks, how they're migrating from Alaska to Florida to Mexico. So they cross over state lines, country lines, and they don't understand property boundaries, basically. Number 6, every person has an equal opportunity under the law to participate in hunting and fishing. Number 7, scientific management is the proper means for wildlife conservation. And I think it is very, very fitting for number 7 to be that, because that is going to be my next point, is talking about the scientific management of wildlife. Now, this ballot initiative flies just sucker punch right to the face of that seventh kind of rule right there, because we are no longer listening to the biologists and the scientists that study these animals for a living. We are now just talking about the voters, the general voting public, and their opinion on whether or not they should be hunted, an emotional opinion on whether or not these mountain lions should be hunting. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife has developed several studies talking about population data and things like that, and they have very clearly specified that not only are mountain lions thriving, they're actually they actually require, by their recommendation, they require hunting to keep their population in check and to make sure that they're not getting into trouble. It's very well known among the wildlife community and biologists, scientists, things like that, that hunting of mountain lions prevents human mountain lion interactions. It prevents negative interactions of mountain lions hunting in like mountain lion depredation on livestock and things like that. Very, very well known, and you can look up several studies about this sort of stuff. So why are we now taking the management of these animals out of the hands of the experts and just voting on it? Especially in a state of Colorado where 90% of the population lives in and around the Denver metro area, and they aren't connected with those sorts of landscapes, those sorts of animals, all of that stuff. They're not connected to, what the actual implications are of removing the hunting season of mountain lions. These ranchers, these hunters, these fishermen that live out in those areas where these mountain lions actually live are far more educated on the implications. So, why is it going to a popularity vote at this point? It just doesn't make any sense to me, and it flies in the face of what has gotten us to this point right now. And this point right now is thriving populations of elk and mule deer and moose in Colorado and whitetail throughout the country, and turkeys and all of this stuff. We have come back, and we've really bolstered the population of wildlife in places that it never historically was. Like turkeys, for example, are now in 49 of the 50 states. So it's like, we've been having success with this for 100 years now. Why are we starting to change it? And I think it really comes down to an attack on hunting culture. And that brings me to kind of my next point. So, like, why do hunters care so much about hunting and maintaining hunting culture? It's because there's value in it for us. And in this day and age, in this world where prices are exorbitant, they're out of control expensive, inflation is crazy, the price of meat at the grocery store is crazy, hunters rely on this stuff to provide for their families. I mean, the financial burden that we would have had if we didn't have an elk in the freezer all year, 200, 300 pounds of elk meat in the freezer. I mean, it would have been huge. It would have been so much money we would have been spending on food and things like that. So there's a huge value there for these animals. And these mountain lion they kill on average, one deer or elk every single week. So, whenever this population's unmanaged, unchecked, the population of other animals is going to go down, and it's going to go down rapidly. Especially, now that they tried to go with the reintroduction of wolves through box biology again, kind of going in the face of wildlife conservation. I'm all for these predators being on the landscape. They've been there far longer than we have, so far longer than, they've been thriving there. That is their territory, right? So I'm all for them being on the landscape, but having a plan, a management plan where we can harvest those renewable resources, I think it's important. And that also brings me to like cultural value. It's monetary cultural value. Once an animal doesn't have cultural value, what's the motivation to save it, to help protect it? I know Clay Newcomb from Meat Eater, he always says this, that the highest honor that any animal could ever have is to have a hunting season, because that means that animal will, as long as that hunting season persists, will always be protected, because people are always going to want to chase after it. They're going to want to consume the meat. They're going to want to preserve the pelt, and it's going to provide them with some monetary and cultural value. So why are we attacking a certain subset of a culture just because we don't agree with it? That's like, I'm trying to think about like what you can compare this to that regular people would understand, because the same thing's kind of happening in England with fox hunting. Is they're saying that they're being their culture is being attacked because they ban the hunting of foxes in England. A historical culture is now being attacked. But I'm trying to explain it in even more simple terms. So let's think about, for example, I work in sales right now. So let's think, for example, like you have like an engineer, okay? You have someone that like very prestigious job, does a lot of great work. There's an engineer, and then you have a salesman or a saleswoman. Now, this attack on like hunting culture would be like saying, because hunters, they use hunting to provide for themselves, for their families, much like a job would provide you money so that you could go then, go to the store and buy food and things like that. So like an engineer, for example, would be like, you know what? I don't agree with how you're making money in sales, So I don't think that there should be any salespeople anymore, and there should just be engineers. That's about how much sense it makes to me. Like, just because you don't agree with something does not mean that it's wrong. Just because you don't agree with the way that we like to be connected to our food doesn't mean it's wrong. There's a lot of these wildlife advocates and things like that, and these extreme people that are like, yeah, you shouldn't hunt. But then they go to the store and they buy a nice pretty packaged piece of ground meat. The same exact thing happened for that meat to be on that store, and if not, more barbaric and more ruthless than any hunter would ever do. You're talking about these huge beef companies that are slaughtering millions of cows every single year, and they got to do that in an efficient way. I'm telling you, it's not pretty. There's a reason that they don't allow cameras in these places. They don't allow news reporters or anything like that because it's pretty ruthless and terrible. At least with hunting, these animals are living a wild, free range existence before they're being used as food. So there's that. So that's kind of my opinion on the whole culture thing, the whole culture side of things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about was what happens exactly if there were no hunters? There were no hunters for these mountain lions. There were no hunters in general. A lot of bad things. Like just for me as an example for what I do as a hunter. I'm not saying like I'm anything special. There's millions of people like me around the country that do the exact same thing. Every single year, because I care about hunting so much and I love to do it and I need the meat to provide for myself and my family, I spend thousands of dollars on these tags. Spend thousands of dollars and I give that to these wildlife organizations like the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, like Montana, like Idaho, all these places. I just in Colorado, for example, this year I paid $900 for an elk tag, paid $150 for the general license, and then I paid $450 for a mule deer tag. That's $1,500 I basically donate to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife at a 10% chance. That's the average elk harvest rate across all species, all seasons, all manners to take. 10% chance of getting an elk. So that's like you giving, like Walmart, for example, $1,500 because you have this specific TV in mind. You're like, yes, I really want this specific TV. I think it'll add a lot of value to my house. You go and you give Walmart $1,500 before you even enter the store, and then you go in the store, you run to the back to the technology section, and there's only a 10% chance that TV is going to be there. That's basically what I'm doing because I'm that passionate and that that willing to spend money and provide funding for these animals, for these for their habitat, things like that. Make sure we're conserving and protecting them. $1,500. That's not even to mention the 10 other states that I'm applying to, that I'm buying preference points in, things like that. It's not even including all those. So that is all of that funding would be gone if there weren't hunters. And what happens whenever there's no monetary value in America in a capitalist type of economy where everything has a monetary value? Money talks, right? And if there's no money, no one's going to care. No one is going to care. Okay? And once these wildlife advocacy, once these groups, they start shelling out $2,000, $3,000 a year to protect and conserve these habitats and these animals, then we can talk. Then we can talk about, if you're really that against it, then we can talk about it. But up until that point, if you're not doing that, then what the heck? You have no grounds to argue over what it is that I'm doing. You have no idea what it is that I'm doing and why I do it. So just take that into consideration, and make sure that, that's kind of front of mind. Now, I'll step off my soapbox now. I know I've been going for a while, but I just wanted to share these points because a lot of people don't understand that, hey, like, a lot of money comes from this, and a lot of funding for these animals comes from this, and if it wasn't for this funding, then these animals would not be here. These elk, these deer, whitetails, these turkeys, buffalo wouldn't be a thing anymore if it wasn't for the money that hunters have collected over the years since 1910, after the market hunting experiment ended. So just keep it in mind. I mean, it's very, very important. It's not even like a hobby for me. It's who I am as a person. Hunting is who I am as a person. I think about it every single day for, hours at a time, every single day. And it's how I survive, especially in this expensive world. It's how I survive. And you don't have to agree with it. I'm sure I don't agree with a lot of things that you believe in. But that doesn't mean that I'm trying to take it away from you. So please just take that into consideration. Next time someone approaches you about signing some sort of petition to ban hunting or anything like that, just understand the other side of it, the cultural side of things, and we'll all be in way better shape. Being able to, have our disagreements, yet still support one another as Americans, and understand that not everything has to be the way that I think it should be. Okay? All right. Now that that'll kind of wrap things up. I know that was long-winded and kind of emotional and things like that, but it's just how I feel, and I think it needs to be said and it needs to be shared, and that's the benefit of social media nowadays, and one of the few benefits, but a benefit nevertheless. So yeah, I appreciate it. Really appreciate you watching. If you got to this point, kudos to you. You are a true fan, and I appreciate that very much. Other than that, I'm gonna wrap things up here. I look forward to bringing you all of the things that are going on out in Colorado. I think hopefully I got a couple people joining me on the podcast, and we'll be talking about the trip in depth next week. So make sure you stay tuned and make sure to keep it wild. Thank you, guys.